The plasma rifle bolt missed Commander Vexilla Drakmore's head by mere centimeters, searing the ceremonial arch behind her. What should have been the most peaceful moment in recent galactic history, the wedding of Ambassador Linth to the Crethely warlord Grix, Ironspine had erupted into chaos. But it wasn't the assassination attempt that made every species in the assembled crowd freeze in terror. It was the baby, floating 3 meters above the altar, surrounded by a shimmering barrier of pure energy. Was a human infant, no older than 6 months. The child's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and reality itself seemed to bend around its tiny form. Where plasma bolts should have found their mark, they simply stopped, suspended in midair, like frozen lightning. "By the void's embrace," whispered Grix, his massive form trembling despite a lifetime of conquest. "What manner of weapon is this?" The assembled delegates, Crethely warriors, Vorthok merchants, Silaxian diplomats, and a dozen other species pressed themselves against the ceremonial chamber's walls. They had heard the stories, the whispered rumors that had spread through the galaxy like wildfire over the past generation. Tales of humans achieving the impossible, of their inexplicable ability to survive scenarios that would annihilate entire fleets. But this was different. This was a baby, a helpless, gurgling infant that had somehow rendered the most advanced military technology in the galaxy completely useless. Captain Rona Stormwind of the Terran Expeditionary Force stood calmly at her assigned position, her dress uniform pristine despite the chaos. Unlike the other delegates, she showed no surprise, no fear, only a knowing smile that made the Crethely honor guard step back in instinctive dread. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice carrying across the chamber with authority that transcended species barriers. "All of you. The ceremony will continue." The would-be assassins, a cell of Crethely hardliners, opposed to the peace treaty, their weapons not by choice, but because they could no longer lift them. The baby cooed softly, and the gravitational field around the chamber shifted just enough to press every weapon to the ground. Ambassador Linth, her elegant features pale with shock, found her voice first. "Captain Stormwind, what is the meaning of this?" "That child is exactly what he appears to be," Rona interrupted, walking slowly toward the floating infant. "A baby. My nephew, actually. His parents couldn't make it to the wedding, so I'm babysitting." The absurdity of the statement would have been laughable, if not for the clear evidence of the child's impossible abilities. As Rona approached, the baby's energy field flickered, and he gently descended into her arms, giggling as if nothing unusual had occurred. "You see," Rona continued, adjusting the child's blanket with practiced ease, "humans have always been adaptable. We evolve, we overcome, we find ways to survive. But what none of you realized is that we're still evolving, still becoming something more." The baby little Cain Stormwind reached up with chubby fingers and touched his aunt's face. For just a moment, the same otherworldly light flickered in her eyes. "The question isn't what we've become," Rona said, her smile widening as she looked around the chamber at the terrified faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings. "The question is, what we're going to become next." The stunned silence that followed Rona's words was broken by Ambassador Linth's shaking voice. How long have you known?" "Known what, Ambassador?" Rona replied, gently bouncing baby Cain in her arms. The infant had returned to normal appearance, looking like any other human child, except for the occasional spark of light that danced across his fingertips. "That humans are changing. That we're adapting to the cosmos in ways that even we don't fully understand." Grix, despite his fearsome reputation, took another step back. "The legends speak of the silent evolution. We thought them merely stories told to frighten younglings." "Not stories," Rona confirmed. "Observations. Your species has been watching us for 3 generations, documenting our ... developments. You've seen our soldiers survive vacuum exposure, our civilians adapt to alien atmospheres, our children display capabilities that shouldn't be possible. The Vorthok merchant prince, Quelix Goldweaver, His usually confident demeanor shattered, struggled to form words. The trade negotiations, the resource agreements. You've been deliberately underselling your capabilities. Not deliberately, Rona corrected. We genuinely didn't know. The changes happen gradually, sometimes skipping generations. Little Cain here is what we call a breakthrough case. The abilities that have been quietly developing in our species for decades suddenly manifesting in a single individual. The baby gurgled and clapped his hands together. The sound created a small sonic boom that rattled the chamber's reinforced windows. Several delegates ducked instinctively. My apologies, Rona said, not sounding sorry at all. He's still learning to control his strength. Yesterday he accidentally opened a hole in space-time while playing with his toys. Fortunately, it was only a small one. The Silaxian diplomat, Viridian Mindhunter, her telepathic abilities legendary throughout the galaxy, pressed her palms against her temples. I cannot read him. The child's mind is shielded by something I've never encountered. It's like staring into the heart of a star. Fascinating, Rona mused. His parents mentioned he was unusually quiet during their last telepathic conference call. Perhaps he's developing defenses already. The implications were staggering. If humans were spontaneously evolving psychic defenses, energy manipulation, and reality warping abilities, the careful balance of galactic power was about to shift dramatically. The Krethali hegemony, built on military might. The Vorthok Consortium, founded on technological superiority. The Silaxian Confederation, ruling through psychic dominance. All of it could become obsolete overnight. What do you want? Grix finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Want? Rona seemed genuinely puzzled. The same thing we've always wanted. Peace, prosperity, the chance to explore the galaxy alongside our neighbors. Why would our evolution change that? Because, Linth said slowly, power corrupts. And you're describing power beyond anything we've ever imagined. Cain chose that moment to reach toward the ceremonial flowers decorating the altar. The blooms, beautiful but artificial constructs of crystallized energy, suddenly burst into real life. Living petals unfurled, releasing a fragrance that spoke of Earth's meadows and forests. The baby clapped in delight. Cain's parents are farmers, Rona explained conversationally. They've been having remarkable success with their crops lately. Plants growing in soil that should be barren, fruits that can survive in any climate. They attributed it to new agricultural techniques. But now we know the truth, Grix finished. Your species isn't just evolving. You're reshaping reality itself. Rona nodded slowly. And that terrifies you, shouldn't it? Demanded Quelix, his golden skin pale with fear. Your kind could remake the galaxy according to your desires. Reshape entire worlds, rewrite the laws of physics themselves. We could, Rona agreed, but we won't. Because despite everything you've witnessed today, we're still human. And humans, at their core, believe in choice. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of minds desperately trying to process an impossible reality. Baby Cain continued to play with the no-living flowers, his innocent laughter echoing off the walls while the assembled delegates grappled with the implications of what they were witnessing. Viridian Mindhunter was the first to break the silence. Her usually melodious voice strained. Captain Stormwind, you speak of choice, but what choice do we have? If your species can reshape reality, rewrite the fundamental laws of existence, how can any treaty, any agreement, any relationship between our peoples have meaning? Rona shifted Cain to her other arm as the baby reached for a crystal chandelier hanging 20 meters above them. The chandelier obligingly lowered itself to his eye level, its faceted surfaces casting rainbow patterns across his fascinated face the same way they've always had meaning, she replied calmly. Through trust, respect, and the understanding that power without wisdom is destruction. You think we haven't considered the implications of what we're becoming? She gestured to the floating chandelier. Every human parent with a child like Cain lives in constant fear. Fear that their child might accidentally unmake something precious. Fear that they might reshape the world without understanding the consequences. Fear that they might lose their humanity in the process of becoming something more. Grick's iron spine, veteran of 1,000 battles, found himself asking a question he had never thought to voice. How do you teach restraint to a god? Same way you taught restraint to yourself, Rona answered. Through love, through patience, through the understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose when not to use that ability. Cain giggled and clapped his hands again. This time, instead of a sonic boom, the sound created a gentle wave of warmth that spread throughout the chamber. Several delegates gasped as old injuries healed, as chronic pains vanished, as decades of accumulated stress simply melted away. He's not even trying to do that, Rona observed. For him, healing is as natural as breathing, but he's learning to control it, to direct it, to understand when it's appropriate and when it's not. Ambassador Linth, her face now radiant with health she hadn't felt in decades, stared at the child in wonder. How many humans can do this? We're not entirely sure, Rona admitted. The abilities manifest differently in different individuals. Some affect gravity, others manipulate energy, still others seem to influence probability itself. What we do know is that the number is growing. An entire species of reality whispered Quelix. The galaxy will never be the same. No, Rona agreed. It won't, but that doesn't mean it will be worse. Change is terrifying, but it's also inevitable. The question is whether we face it together or allow fear to drive us apart. The baby suddenly looked up at his aunt, his eyes momentarily flashing with that otherworldly light. For just an instant, everyone in the chamber felt a brief connection to something vast and incomprehensible, yet fundamentally benevolent. It was the touch of a mind that could reshape galaxies, but chose instead to giggle at pretty lights. The Terran Council has been debating this for months, Rona continued. How to reveal the truth without causing panic. How to integrate our changing species into galactic society without disrupting the delicate balance we've all worked so hard to achieve. And your decision, Grix asked. To do exactly what we're doing now. To be honest, to demonstrate that despite our evolving capabilities, we remain committed to our values, and to trust that the bonds we've built over generations are strong enough to weather this revelation. Cain yawned, his tiny mouth opening in a perfect circle. As he did, several of the more nervous delegates felt their own tension ease, replaced by an unexpected sense of peace. You're using the child? Viridian accused, though her tone held more wonder than anger. Using his abilities to influence our emotions. He's not using anything, Rona replied. He's simply being himself. If his presence brings peace, if his joy is contagious, if his innocence reminds us of what we're fighting to protect, then perhaps that's exactly what we all need right now. The truth hung in the air like a challenge. Humanity was becoming something unprecedented, something that could render every other species in the galaxy obsolete. But they were choosing to remain human, to hold on to their values, to extend their hand in friendship, even as they gained the power to take whatever they wanted. The question was whether the galaxy would be wise enough to accept that hand. The weight of the revelation settled over the chamber like a shroud. Each delegate faced a moment that would define not only their own species' future, but the fate of galactic civilization itself. The baby in Rona's arms represented either the greatest threat or the greatest hope the galaxy had ever known. You ask us to trust, Grix said finally. His massive frame still tense, despite the waves of calm emanating from little Cain. But trust must be earned, and power. Power changes everything, does it? Rona challenged. Before today, you knew humans as explorers, diplomats, traders, scientists. We've been your allies, your partners, your friends. Has that changed because you now know the extent of our capabilities? Quelix stepped forward, his merchant's instincts warring with his fear. The question isn't whether you've changed, Captain. The question is whether you will change. Power corrupts, as the ambassador said. It's a universal constant, observed across every species, every civilization. Except it's not, Rona replied quietly. Cain's parents, Darius and Miras, discovered their abilities when their first child was still born. Darius reached out instinctively, desperately, and pulled his daughter's soul back from whatever lies beyond death. He could have resurrected armies, could have made himself immortal, could have rewritten the very concept of mortality. The chamber fell silent, hanging on her words. Instead, he chose to become a better father. He learned to heal sick animals on their farm, to nurture plants that fed hungry neighbors, to mend broken toys with a touch. When Cain was born with these abilities magnified 100-fold, they didn't see a weapon or a tool for conquest. They saw their son. Cain, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, looked solemnly around the chamber. His infant gaze met each delegate's eyes in turn, and in that moment, they felt it not manipulation, but pure, innocent curiosity. The child was studying them, learning from them, trying to understand these strange adults who seemed so frightened of his presence. What does he see when he looks at us? Viridian whispered, her telepathic abilities still unable to penetrate the child's natural shields. Probably the same thing any baby sees, Rona answered. Potential friends, interesting faces, sources of attention and affection. He doesn't see the political implications of his existence. He doesn't understand that his very presence could reshape galactic civilization. He's just a baby who wants to play with shiny things and take naps. As if summoned by her words, Cain yawned again. This time, the yawn created a small, temporal distortion, causing the light in the chamber to shift slightly, showing glimpses of the room as it had been moments before, layers of time folding over each other like translucent sheets. He's getting sleepy, Rona observed with the casual tone of any aunt dealing with a tired child. When he naps, he sometimes dreams in other dimensions. Last week he accidentally opened a portal to what we think was the Andromeda Galaxy. We got some lovely vacation photos before we figured out how to close it. The casual mention of interdimensional travel delivered in the same tone as discussing a child's naptime routine was perhaps the most terrifying thing any of them had heard yet. You're asking us to pretend this is normal, Lynn said, her voice strained. To go back to our worlds, to our leaders, to our peoples, and explain that humanity has become something beyond our comprehension, but we should just ... trust that everything will be fine. No, Rona said firmly. I'm asking you to recognize that this isn't about trust. It's about reality. Humanity is evolving, whether that frightens you or not. The question is whether we face this new reality together, or allow fear to drive us into conflict. Grix straightened, his warrior's instincts finally overcoming his shock. And if we choose conflict, if we decide that humanity has become too dangerous to coexist with, the question hung in the air like a blade. Rona's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the chamber's atmosphere. The baby's presence seemed to grow more substantial, more real, as if he were suddenly occupying more space than his tiny form should allow. Then you'll discover what happens when you threaten human children, Rona said simply. And I assure you, it won't be pretty. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the same casual certainty she'd used to discuss Cain's dimensional portals. The delegates realized with dawning horror that they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a species that could defend itself, not with weapons or technology, but with the fundamental forces of reality itself. So, what happens now? Viridian asked, her voice barely audible. Rona smiled, and suddenly she looked like nothing more than a proud aunt holding her nephew. Now we finish the wedding. Ambassador Linth and Warlord Grix exchange vows. We celebrate the union of their peoples, and we all go home to our families. Tomorrow, we begin the real work of figuring out how to build a future together. And if we can't, Quell expressed, then we'll find another way, Rona replied. Because that's what humans do. We adapt, we overcome, and we never give up on the possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. Kane chose that moment to reach toward Grix, his tiny hand glowing with soft light. The massive warlord found himself bending down instinctively, and when the baby's fingers touched his scarred cheek, decades of pain and anger simply ... faded ... in that touch. Grix felt something he had never experienced before, hope without condition, love without agenda, trust without reservation. It was the gift of innocence, freely given, asking nothing in return. Perhaps, he said softly, it's time to find out what we're truly made of. The wedding ceremony resumed with a surreal quality that would be remembered in galactic history for millennia. Ambassador Linth and Warlord Grix exchanged vows while baby Kane dozed in Captain Stormwind's arms, occasionally causing small reality fluctuations that made the ceremonial candles burn with impossible colors, or turned the flower petals into tiny stars that danced around the altar. What should have been a simple diplomatic marriage had become something far more profound, the first step toward a new age of galactic civilization. As the ceremony concluded, the delegates began to disperse, each carrying the weight of knowledge that would forever change their understanding of the universe. But Viridian Minhunter lingered, her telepathic senses still struggling to comprehend what she had witnessed. "Captain," she said as Rona prepared to leave, "may I ask you something?" "Of course. The child's mental barriers, they're not just defenses, are they? There's something else entirely." Rona paused, adjusting Kane's blanket as he slept peacefully in her arms. "What do you mean?" "I've encountered every form of psychic protection known to galactic civilization. Shields, walls, misdirection, even complete mental nullification. But this," she gestured toward the sleeping baby, "this is different. It's not blocking my abilities so much as existing in a space where my abilities simply don't apply." "That's an interesting observation," Rona replied carefully. "He's not just manipulating reality," Viridian continued, her voice filled with growing wonder and terror. "He's creating new realities, pocket dimensions where different rules apply. That's how he stopped the plasma bolts, isn't it? He didn't deflect them or absorb them. He created a space where they simply couldn't exist." The revelation hit both women simultaneously. They weren't just looking at a child with enhanced abilities. They were looking at a being who could create universes with a thought, who could establish new natural laws as easily as breathing. "How many humans can do this?" Viridian whispered. "We're not sure," Rona admitted. "The abilities are manifesting differently in each individual. Some manipulate existing forces, others create new ones entirely. But Kane is special, even among the evolved. What happens when he grows up? When he understands what he can do?" Before Rona could answer, a new voice interrupted their conversation. "That's exactly what we're trying to figure out." They turned to see a tall woman approaching, her features bearing a striking resemblance to baby Kane. This was Mira Stormwind, Kane's mother, and the air around her seemed to shimmer with barely contained power. "Mira," Rona said, relief evident in her voice. "I thought you couldn't make it." "We couldn't miss this," Mira replied, taking her son from Rona's arms. "Especially not after what happened during the ceremony. We felt it from 3 star systems away." "Felt what?" Viridian asked. "Kane's first successful reality lock," Mira explained, her voice filled with pride and concern. "He created a stable pocket dimension and maintained it for over an hour. That's doctoral level dimensional physics, and he's 6 months old." The implications were staggering. If a baby could create stable pocket dimensions, what could a trained adult do? What could an entire civilization of reality manipulators accomplish? You're wondering if we'll remake the galaxy in our image, another voice said. Darius Stormwind approached, his farmer's clothes incongruous with the formal setting, but his presence unmistakably powerful. It's a fair question, and the answer, Viridian asked. The answer is that we're asking ourselves the same question every day, Darius replied. When I brought our daughter back from death, I had to face the possibility that I might have broken something fundamental about the universe. When Cain was born already manipulating reality, we had to confront the possibility that we might be raising a god. But he's not a god, Mira added softly, kissing her son's forehead. He's our child. He gets cranky when he's hungry. He cries when he's scared, and he needs us to teach him right from wrong. Power doesn't change that, doesn't it? Viridian challenged. How do you teach morality to someone who can rewrite the laws of existence? The same way you teach it to anyone, Darius answered. Through example, through love, through the understanding that with great power comes the responsibility to use it wisely. Cain stirred in his mother's arms, opening his eyes to look at the gathered adults. For a moment, his infant gaze held a depth that seemed ancient, as if he understood far more than he should. Then he smiled and reached for his father's face, and he was just a baby again. The real question, Mira said, isn't whether we'll change the galaxy. The question is whether we'll change it for the better. And how do you ensure that? Viridian asked. By making sure he never forgets that he's human, Darius replied. By teaching him that his greatest power isn't his ability to reshape reality, but his capacity to choose compassion over dominance, creation over destruction, love over fear. And if he chooses differently, the question hung in the air like a sword. For a moment, both parents looked impossibly young, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their responsibility. Then we'll face that challenge when it comes, Myra said finally. Because giving up on our children, giving up on the possibility that they might choose to be better than we are, is giving up on the future itself. As if responding to his mother's words, Cain giggled and clapped his hands. The sound created a small cascade of light that transformed into butterflies made of pure energy, dancing around the chamber before dissolving into sparkles that settled on everyone present like a blessing. Show off, Rona said fondly, and for the first time in hours, everyone in the chamber laughed. It was a small moment of normalcy in an extraordinary situation, but it carried profound meaning. Despite everything they had witnessed, despite the cosmic implications of humanity's evolution, this was still a family celebrating with friends. The fundamentals of connection, of love, of shared joy, remained unchanged. Perhaps that was the answer. Perhaps that was hope. 3 months after the wedding that changed everything, the galaxy was still learning to navigate its new reality. The revelation of humanity's evolution had sent shockwaves through every major civilization, but the expected chaos had not materialized. Instead, something unprecedented was happening. Cooperation. Captain Rona Stormwind stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together to build humanity's first dedicated training facility. The station would serve as a place where young humans could learn to control their evolving abilities under the guidance of the galaxy's greatest minds. Quite a sight, isn't it? Rona turned to see Ambassador Linth approaching, her expression thoughtful. The Krethali Vorthok wedding had been successful, but it had been overshadowed by the far more significant union it had inadvertently facilitated. I didn't expect this, Rona admitted. I thought fear would drive us apart, not bring us together. Perhaps. That's what makes humans so remarkable, Linth replied. You consistently exceed expectations, even your own. Through the viewport, they could see the station's central hub taking shape. Designed by Vorthok engineers, powered by Salaxian psychic amplifiers, and protected by Krethali defensive systems, it represented the finest collaborative effort in galactic history. How is young Cain adapting to his new environment? Linth asked. Rona smiled. See for yourself. She pointed to a section of the station where construction had mysteriously accelerated. The hull plating was installing itself, guided by invisible forces that worked with precision no machine could match. At the center of the activity, barely visible through the safety barriers, was a small figure in a child-sized construction suit. He's helping, Rona explained. Mira and Darius thought it would be good for him to understand the work being done on his behalf. He's fascinated by the engineering, and the engineers. Terrified and delighted in equal measure. Yesterday, he fixed a quantum resonance cascade that had been puzzling them for weeks. This morning he turned their coffee machine into a small star that produces the perfect brew. They're not sure whether to worship him or ask for his autograph. Linth laughed, a sound that would have been unthinkable before the wedding, and the other children, arriving daily. We've identified 43 individuals so far, ranging in age from infants to teenagers. Each one unique, each one capable of reshaping reality in their own way. The scope of the project was staggering. Unity Station would house not just the evolved humans, but also the finest teachers, philosophers, and ethicists from every species. The goal was ambitious, to create a generation of reality manipulators who understood not just the extent of their power, but the weight of their responsibility. Have there been any incidents? Linth asked carefully. A few. Last week, a teenage girl named Arya accidentally created a parallel timeline where everyone spoke in rhyme. It took 3 days to fix, and some of the maintenance staff still slip into verse occasionally. And there was the boy who turned an entire corridor into a garden maze made of living crystal. But that was actually quite beautiful once we figured out how to navigate it. You're remarkably calm about these incidents. Panic serves no purpose, Rona replied. These children are learning to control abilities that shouldn't exist. Mistakes are inevitable. The important thing is that they're learning from them. And the adults, the evolved humans, who are fully grown. Rona's expression grew more serious. That's a different challenge. Darius and Mira have been working with others like them, establishing protocols and ethical guidelines. But adults who suddenly develop godlike powers, the psychological adjustment is significant. Any problems? A few. There was a man who decided he could solve galactic hunger by turning asteroids into food. Noble goal, but he nearly disrupted the orbital mechanics of 3 star systems. We're still cleaning that up. How do you handle such situations? The same way any community handles members who lose their way. We talk to them, we remind them of their connections to others, and we help them find a path forward that honors both their power and their humanity. And if talking doesn't work, Rona was quiet for a long moment. Then we do what we must to protect the innocent. The power to create also carries the power to destroy. We pray we never have to use it. Through the viewport, they watched as Kane's section of the station suddenly bloomed with light. The hull plating had been replaced by transparent aluminum. That revealed a garden growing inside. Not just any garden, but a perfect recreation of Earth's ecosystem, complete with weather patterns and seasonal changes. He's homesick, Rona observed. This is how he remembers his parents' farm. It's beautiful, Linth breathed, and terrifying. Yes, Rona agreed. It's both. That's humanity in a nutshell, capable of breathtaking beauty and devastating destruction, often simultaneously. Our evolution hasn't changed that fundamental truth. It simply amplified it. So what happens now? Now we do what we've always done. We muddle through, we make mistakes, we learn from them, and we try to do better tomorrow. The only difference is that now our mistakes might accidentally create new forms of life, and our successes might solve problems we didn't even know existed. The galaxy will never be the same. No, Rona agreed. It won't. But then again, it never stays the same. Anyway, change is the only constant in the universe. We're just helping it along. As they watched, Kane's garden began to spread, connecting with other sections of the station. Where it touched, the sterile construction materials transformed into living interfaces that responded to thought and emotion. The station wasn't just being built, it was growing, evolving, becoming something unprecedented. He's not just creating a garden, Linth realized. He's creating a new form of architecture. A living station that adapts to its inhabitants' needs. And he's 6 months old, Rona added. Imagine what he'll be capable of when he's older. It's a sobering thought. It's a hopeful thought, Rona corrected. Because, despite everything he can do, everything he might become, he's still human. He still needs love, guidance, and the chance to grow into his potential. As long as we remember that, as long as we help him remember that, the future is bright. Kane's laughter carried across the station's communication system, transmitted through the living interfaces he had created. It was the sound of pure joy, untainted by the cosmic implications of his existence. In that moment, he wasn't a reality manipulator or a potential god. He was simply a baby who had created something beautiful and wanted to share it with the world. The universe is vast and full of wonders, Rona said softly. But the greatest wonder of all is that despite our growing power, despite our evolution into something beyond current understanding, we're still capable of that sound. We're still capable of innocent joy. That's what you're really teaching them, isn't it? Linth asked. Not just control over their abilities, but the importance of maintaining their humanity. Exactly. Because in the end, power without humanity is just another form of extinction. But humanity with unlimited power. She smiled, watching as Kane's garden continued to spread, bringing life to every corner of the station. That might just be the key to everything we've ever dreamed of. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges that no civilization had ever faced. But as the galaxy's first class of evolved humans began their training, as species that had been enemies for centuries worked together to build something unprecedented, as a baby's innocent laughter transformed cold metal into living beauty, one thing became clear. Humanity's greatest strength had never been their ability to adapt to the universe. It was their ability to inspire the universe to adapt to them, and perhaps, in a cosmos vast and often cruel, that was exactly what everyone needed. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer with new possibility, as if the universe itself was evolving, alongside its newest children. The age of humanity had begun, and it would be glorious. End of story.